Hello everyone, this is Prashant and we are starting a new unit. This unit is basically about nerves. What are nerves and what are their functions basically? But we are gonna first focus on the nature of the nerves. So, yeah, so nerves connect everything in the body, basically your brain, other organs, your muscle fibers, everything is connected through a system of wires called nerves. So let's start with our first researcher who did discoveries in this area, and his name is Jonas Muller. So what did he discover? Okay, so he did certain form of experiments in which he kind of put electrodes or use certain other form of stimulations to sense organs like pressure or chemical that was mainly used for taste buds. And what he did was he stimulated those nerves connected to the sense organs. And he observed that when those nerves are stimulated in all these different ways, they generate sensations. So, suppose if I stimulate the optic nerve of a person, it kind of produces flashes or flashes of light in their vision. Different type of stimuli uh, create different type create similar sensory response in a same nerve. For example, if I use different stimuli like electrical, mechanical, chemical in the optic nerve, the reaction is always the same. That is, in the form of sensation, we get light flashes. Okay, but if we reverse that, we found out if I use same stimuli like electric current and apply it to different sensory organs, each nerves generate a specific response. For example, on stimulating optic nerve, you kind of get light flashes, and on stimulating auditory nerve, you get sound or sensation of sound. So, yep. So that was his experiment on people, and he deduced the following. Okay, nerves connect specific sense organs, yeah, and those nerves, when they are stimulated, create sensations, regardless of the intensity of sensation. Okay, same sensation, same stimuli produces different form of sensations in different nerves. That depending on the what type of nerve is connected to what type of sense organ. Okay, and there is a relationship between sensory nerve and their particular sensations. Earlier, we kind of logically kind of figure out, for example, alkaline croton. What did he figure out? He figured out, okay, there are channels, wire-like structures that connect eye to brain and different sense organs to the brain. So they must carry sensations. In this experiment, we actually proved that. So yeah, proved that logic. And then he came up with a certain law of specific nerve energies. Uh, where he summarized all his experimental conclusions. And this law says that nature of sensation depends on which type of nerve pathways are stimulated or activated, not on the nature of external stimulus. So all the different forms of stimulus will generate a specific type of response in a specific sensory nerve that is connected to a specific sense organ. So regardless of whatever stimuli you give to a optic nerve, it will always generate flashes. To a auditory nerve, it will always generate sound. To a olfactory nerve, it will always generate a sense of taste or smell. Okay, that is clear. Now we can move forward to the next researcher who build upon these findings. And but here I am actually kind of telling you this is the diagram before I move forward to the next researcher. This is the diagram that connect, which we kind of uh, discussed earlier, that how all the sensory and motor nerves are connected to the pons of the brain. So yeah, so these nerves were stimulated. So yeah, and obviously their effects of stimulation was kind of find out. So yeah, that's how it is mapped out. So let's start with our next researcher, and his name is Robert White. So what did he discovered? Okay, his method was uh, decapitation of frogs. Basically, he dissected the frogs and he kind of uh, pricked kind of frog limbs. For example, there are nerves in a frog's spinal cord. Okay, there's spinal nerves, and he kind of tried to generate a spinal reflex by stimulating those nerves. What did he observe? He observed that once a spinal cord is destroyed, no amount of response was generated, no amount of what you call it reflex or motor reflex or a leg kind of showing any movement on stimulation was possible. Okay, but reflex occur even if one part or section of spinal cord remain intact, and it generated a smaller reflex, but it generated reflex nevertheless. So intactness of a spinal cord is necessary for generating a form of reflex. Okay, now what was his reasoning on the basis of this experiment? Okay, his reasoning was as follows: even animals without head can show movement. For example, if you cut a head of a chicken, it will still move, or if you cut the head of a snake, it will still move. So there are reflexes that are independent of brain in our body that can be generated. So he found out that motor nerves are connected to spinal nerves because when you stimulate motor nerves, they actually generate movement in the leg and they are connected to the spinal cord. Okay, if a spinal cord is destroyed, no reflex is generated. Okay, even a small section of spinal cord generates reflex. So spinal cord is essential for reflex actions or responses in human body or any form of body that has a nervous system. Okay, and spinal cord can act independent of brain. Yep. So we kind of these are the conclusions we found out, and now we are moving forward to our next researcher or two researchers, and their names are Charles Bell and Francois Magneti. Okay, I maybe butchered his name, but let's go. Okay, so what was their experiment or method? Okay, their method was dissection or vivisection of animals. They took either dead animals or live animals and they dissected them. And what they did was they conducted experiments on them. And what form of experiment? Basically, they stimulated their spinal nerve, ventral spinal nerve. Basically, when you stimulate this nerve, it actually produces movement in uh, animal's body. There is other form of nerve that is dorsal that remains behind uh, the spinal cord in your back, and it actually produces sensation of pain. So when this nerve is stimulated, animal shows pain. When other nerve is stimulated, animals show movement but no pain. Okay, so there are kind of two basic divisions. So when they cut the ventral nerve that is in front of the body of the spinal nerve, they found out there was some form of paralysis. A person cannot move. This you can see in real life observation as well. If you get kind of any form of injury on your spinal cord, you cannot move. You get a form of paralysis. So same thing happened here, but it kind of artificial paralysis they induced. Okay. When they cut the dorsal nerve, there was kind of loss of sensation. So for example, the animal cannot feel any form of pain when dorsal nerves were kind of cut off. So yeah. So what was their reasoning on the basis of these experiments? So what did they found was that sensory nerves carry sensations, motor nerves command movement. So there are two basic form of nerves and they do command movement. And this is very similar to the findings of Herophilius and Erastustus that we discussed in the previous slides. And what they found out that dorsal spinal nerves are the sensory nerves, ventral spinal nerves are motor nerves, and this was known as Bell and Magneti law. Okay, so this is the law that they discovered. So this is the diagram which is showing dorsal nerve that exists on the back side of the body behind the spinal cord, and that ventral nerves exist in front of the body. Dorsal nerve is kind of a sensory neuron or contains sensory nerves, and the ventral nerve is a motor nerve. So yeah, now if we go each by each section, we can see okay where the pain is produced, where movement is produced, and we can actually map out the connection of dorsal and ventral spinal nerves across the body in terms of sensory and motor nerves. So this is the diagram we get. So there are four sections of spinal cord: cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral, and each section is connected to specific body part, as you can see in the diagram. And now we are moving forward to the application. Okay, what are the applications? How do we apply this knowledge in real world? So what we know is that spinal cord sections are connected to specific body parts that we know. Okay, now from a certain form of problem that a person is encountering in their body physiologically, in terms of motor movement, we can actually go back and detect if it is related to which spinal cord section. For example, if suppose my fingers are connected by nerves to C7 and C8 section of a spinal cord. If there is numbness in my fingers, we know that dorsal nerves were kind of damaged because they are sensory nerves in nature. So I cannot sense anything through my nerve fingers. Okay. Now, if I unable to move, okay, if I'm unable to move my hand, uh, but I can feel sensations, then we know ventral roots are damaged. If I cannot do both, then both nerves are damaged. Okay. So that is the application we discussed so far. Now we are going to move forward to our next researcher. So next researcher is John Newport Langley. So what he discovered? Okay, what was his method? Basically, he through our experiments, we know that there is a system or network of sensory and motor nerves, both in brain and spinal cord, that connects to different body parts. So he did multiple techniques: dissection, electrical stimulation, and ablation, which is destruction or of certain brain part or producing lesions. So he used these techniques, and what he did was he traced out each connection of nerve to different organs. He mapped them out properly, like, okay, this nerve goes through this section of the spinal cord, is connected to this body part. Okay, he stimulated those nerves and noted their effects. When he then he kind of cut off those nerves and noted their effect too. So based on that, he formed a huge line of reasoning based on the previous researchers, and he found there is a connection of nerves throughout the body. Each nerve we know has a purpose. It can either produce sensation or motor movement in muscles. Okay, we know that all organs are connected via nerves, uh, and both these nerves affect those organs. They are both sensory nerves and motor nerves connected to each organ. Okay, now we also know that spinal activity, autonomic activities are regulated mostly by central nervous system, and in most specifically, it is controlled by spinal cord. Okay, so what we found out that the signals received are kind of opposite in nature. For example, one kind of inhibits the organ activity, one kind of excites the organ activity. So for example, one nerve would excite the heart rate, the other would lower the heart rate. Okay, so yeah, so both these combination of nerves kind of produce a state of homeostasis. Okay, so the combination of nerves that actually produce excitation of body parts is known as sympathetic nervous system, because they are kind of involved in flight and fight responses. And the other form of nerves that actually calm down your body part or lower your heart rate and stuff like that, those are known as parasympathetic nervous system. So those, both of these are automatic, they are not in your conscious control, and they both form part of the autonomic nervous system. Okay, so this is the diagram of the autonomic nervous system. One is divided into sympathetic nervous system, other is parasympathetic, and you can see how spinal cord or spinal nerves or cranial nerves are connected to different body parts. Okay, so now we are gonna go to the anatomical division. For example, anatomically, we know that uh, there are two organs, main organs, that is brain and spinal cord, at the center of your body, and they come under central nervous system. And all the nerves that are connected to other body parts that are not in the center are come under peripheral, because they are on the sidelines. And we can divide them in the following manner. Central nervous system, we know that it mediates behavior, it controls higher cognitive functions and stuff like that. They come under central nervous system. Motor movements, creating sensations or producing movement or carrying sensations throughout the body, these are converted by somatic nervous system. Basically, these are carried out by nerves, both cranial nerves and spinal nerves, and both are motor and sensory in nature. Okay, Now, autonomic nervous system. This is the one we're discussing. This also contains nerves apart from spinal and cranial nerves, but they are sensory and motor nerves, and they are have two functions. Either they inhibit or excite the system. So things that excite the system come under sympathetic nervous system, and the things that or the nerves that uh, inhibit or calm down the system are known as parasympathetic. So these are the division of central nervous system. Cool. So now we are gonna move forward uh, to our next unit, that is structure of electrical nerves, that I'm gonna cover in the next video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked it, do let me know, do comment, do like and share and subscribe. And that's it. Thank you for watching.